Really thrilled to have you join us this afternoon for what's going to be a really fun, packed hour, talking to some amazing guests about their journeys as women in tech, and also our coach team as well in how they support their apprentices. My name is Chichi Eruchalu. I am the head of digital pathways here at Multiverse. We are on a mission to build an outstanding alternative to university, and one that allows all different pathways to a life of learning. And so today you're going to hear the stories of some incredible women and what they've been doing as they have stepped into the world of tech. So as you can see, we have our amazing panelists here. I'm going to speak to our first group of people and ask them to introduce themselves.
So my name is Fatima, and I'm currently working as a software engineer apprentice at Depop, the digital fashion resale marketplace, where I work within a team to develop, test, and deliver features for the iOS version of our mobile app.
Amazing, thank you. And I've also got your coach here as well. Bernard, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Bernard. I'm Fatima's coach. I've been a coach at Multiverse for just over 2 years now. I am one of the team of software engineering coaches supporting our apprentices through the level 4 apprenticeship.
Hiya, so I'm Rebecca and I am a digital marketing apprentice at Silkthread. Silkthread is a fashion e-commerce site for women's fashion, and I work more specifically within the content creation team, so creating content for social channels, for email and paid ads.
I'm Faria. I'm a digital marketing coach. I've been here at Multiverse for just over a year now, and it's gone so quick. And Rebecca here is one of my top apprentices who's approaching the end of her apprenticeship soon.
My name is Chichi, and my role here is I oversee the delivery of all of our digital and tech programs. So that would be a data analytics, software engineering, and digital marketing. I joined here as a digital marketing coach. My background is in marketing, digital marketing as well. So I'm really passionate about women in tech and kind of really demystifying all of those things around what it means to work in tech. And so this conversation is really going to be exciting. So ladies, I'd love to first understand, so Fatima, really kind of what's been your journey into tech? Like, how did you get into it? What was the steps that you took to get the role that you've got now?
Okay, my journey in tech was, I would say, one of curiosity, because I did not have a traditional academic background, due to the fact that I arrived age 15 in the middle of school years in the UK with no English. So I had to quickly learn English. And then after completing BTech at FE College, I had to start seeking other opportunities to kind of further explore professional career pathways for me. So I spent a lot of time searching, seeking and everything. And at the end, I was able to kind of get onto a level 3 apprenticeship first in tech, because I've always been keen on tech and innovation. So once I completed the apprenticeship, I was certain it was an apprenticeship in tech, but it was no, it was more of tech aligned business analysis than actual tech. And I wanted to do further software engineering roles, and that's why I kept looking again. I went back to the seeking phase and looking, and then that's when I came across the Multiverse and Generation UK bootcamp for software engineering. And so that was the perfect program, because it could teach me the basic skills to start a career in software engineering. So that's how I got into software engineering. So yeah.
Amazing, thank you. And obviously, if you mentioned about Generation UK, Bernard, do you mind just sharing a little bit about kind of what we do there in terms of helping create those opportunities for people who might not necessarily have a tech background or coding background to kind of be able to access the program?
They began by offering they would take young people and train them to be like Amazon DevOps engineers. And so this was very successful, because it's a skill set that anyone can kind of learn who's interested, and actually it opens up a whole sort of like strata of business opportunities or job opportunities. They were interested then in partnering with us to design a program particularly for our software engineering apprenticeship. So how can you take somebody who is interested in tech but doesn't have any coding experience? How can they get into a position where they're ready to start applying for apprenticeships? So we've been doing this now for about 18 months. Our relationship with Generation is working really well. We're like Fatima is a good example. We have some others who are now in sort of positions at the beginning of a tech career that can, that really has sort of no limits to it.
Yeah. Amazing. And then Rebecca, just same question to you. Like, what was your journey getting into tech and kind of the role you're doing now?
So I finished my A-levels in the summer of 2019, which feels like a million years ago now. But nevertheless, I finished them. There was a lot of pressure for me to go to uni. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people experience the same thing. It's an expectation, finish A-levels, go to uni. I knew that wasn't for me. And I decided to take a few months off, make my own decisions. After doing lots of research, I found apprenticeships at Multiverse. And their values align with mine. I found the one at Silk Thread, and I was like, okay, this is just a match for me. Fashion, tech, and a company which is going to support me through my journey. It was kind of like finding the perfect thing for me, and I couldn't be happier to have found it. So yeah.
Fantastic. And Faria, as kind of Rebecca's coach, how can you talk to some of the ways that you've been able to support her on her journey kind of through this apprenticeship? And kind of applying the things around, digital marketing to the work that she's doing at Silk Thread?
So throughout Rebecca's apprenticeship, I support Rebecca with the apprenticeship side of things. So making sure that she's getting the learning that she needs. So we have a syllabus of what we cover in digital marketing. So each month we have different delivery sessions covering the different areas. We also have like one-to-one sessions where we can work on the portfolio. So every apprentice is working on a portfolio throughout their apprenticeship, which is kind of like the best bits of what they do. And it's making sure that the apprentices can make it as best as they can. And within that, there's so many different elements that come up. So it's about teaching the apprentices how to sell themselves best, how to do storytelling, how to really just increase their confidence in what they do and encourage them to make the best out of the apprenticeship. Like, I was an apprentice myself 15 years ago. So I know firsthand about how life-changing they can be, and just showing other apprentices how this is kicking your career off in the best way possible. And Rebecca is an example of someone that's just taken full responsibility for an apprenticeship. And she just hearing about why she came into an apprenticeship in the first place, it was similar about why I went into one in the first place. And ultimately, it's not just about helping them through their career and their apprenticeship. There's also other elements, because these are young people. So there's also elements of mentorship. So we're sharing our experiences within our career as well. Like, I think sometimes it's so easy to forget that these are young people at the beginning of their career. They've maybe not worked before. Being able to handle like workplace disputes, being able to like turn down workload, like extra work, and be able to say, I've got a lot on. All these things that we take for granted, for someone that's just started in the workplace and just come out of education, it can be a challenge. But so yeah, that's what I do. It's getting the apprentices through and making sure that they're getting the best that they can out of the opportunity.
Amazing, I love that. I mean, obviously we know that women only represent like 17% of the tech workforce. So, Fatima, I'd love to hear from you. Like, what are some of the common misconceptions that people have around roles in tech? Or maybe something that, you might have thought, but then coming into it, you're like, oh, actually, this is not what I thought it would be. What would they be? What would you say?
To be honest, maybe it's the fact that I work within a really great team and diverse team. I haven't faced a lot of struggle or challenges, particularly because I'm a woman in tech. But in terms of misconception, maybe like one that I had myself before going into it, even though I had passion for tech and innovation, was like, you have to think a certain way And then for me, that certain way was like maybe a more masculine, geek-like, nerd-like looking way of, to be able to become a software engineer or any professional in the tech industry. And that was a misconception. You have to think or maybe even look a certain way to kind of get into tech. And then I quickly realized, no, actually, yes, you do need to have skill set and abilities that you can develop and grow it. That's why I'm doing an apprenticeship, to grow those skills and abilities. But there is no like a special or specific kind of superpower or look you need to have to get into tech. So
I love that. So that's a really powerful one. So that kind of stereotype, there isn't a kind of a stereotype of what someone looks like to work in tech. What about you, Rebecca? Like, what are some misconceptions that you kind of want to demystify for people to stay around working in tech?
Something that really stands out to me on my apprenticeship journey is when I took part in the coding bootcamp. So that's something I had to do as part of my apprenticeship. And I did it in the summer, and I remember thinking, oh, coding, is this going to be me? It's very techy. My job doesn't really work around the coding side of it. It's much more content. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm just not going to get it. It's going to go completely over my head. I completely surprised myself. Even though I still don't work in coding, I don't know. I remember thinking I would never have thought I'd learn what I did. And when I tell people, yeah, I can code websites, I understand HTML, I understand CSS, they go, what, really? And I'm like, yeah. I just feel like there's I think a misunderstanding of how much you can achieve if you just, try it out, give it a go. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but there's no harm in trying.
Yeah, oh, I really like that, thank you. And I guess, Bernard and Barry, as coaches, like, what are some of the, ask the same question, like those misconceptions that people have around getting roles in tech or working in tech that you're working hard to kind of like change? Bernard, you first.
So one of the things I think is really worth challenging is like thinking that everybody is an expert. If you're a tech, then it means you know everything and you're a real expert. That is not true. Like, in fact, if you go and like actually hang out with more senior engineers, they often they have no idea. They have no idea how something works, and so it's not knowledge that makes you a good engineer. It's just an interest and a willingness to kind of learn a new thing, or so actually that's the quality of a really good engineer. It's that curiosity and a love of learning, and not to feel afraid that you don't know the answer to something. So that all of us can feel like that. So kind of that's one misconception to blow away. It's like, oh, so everybody is a real expert. Anyone who's projecting that, they are projecting it. You can't know everything. So I think that's an important misconception to get out of the way. Like, you don't need to have huge technical knowledge to be really successful in the tech industry.
I remember years ago, I said I really wanted to work in a tech company, specifically like a tech startup, because from what I'd heard and what I could envision about the vibe and everybody gets stuck in, and also being in the forefront of the digital change that we're experiencing. Some of the things that colleagues around me were saying were things like, as a woman, you wouldn't be able to do it because the company is, well, not companies in general, like tech companies and startups, the pay isn't great. There's very, very long working hours and there's no flexibility. So I'm a parent, I have to manage things around school runs, and if my child is sick, that always has to be in my head. So it actually put me off from looking into tech roles, startup roles, all of that for a long time. Another misconception was that it's all about money, money, money. I enjoy making money, but for me, the passion and having a purpose is really important. And it just so happens that I came across Multiverse, which has the perfect combination of the passion, the purpose, and the profit. So I think actually getting into it and realizing for myself that all these misconceptions that people were saying, which they hadn't even experienced for themselves, it wasn't true. And there is definitely a space for women in tech. It's needed. And here I am today.
Thank you. I really like that. And, it's really important that we talk openly about these kind of, myths around what these roles look like, that you need to have a tech background. You need to know how to code to work in tech. If you think about every company across different industries, everybody's using technology in one shape or form or another. So there's roles in all sorts of different places. And often we think tech and it's like, you know, the Silicon Valleys and the Facebooks and the Googles and that sort of thing, but actually tech is everywhere. And, you know, you'll hear later on this afternoon, kind of tech roles in others and kind of other sort of industries as well. I just want to move on now, just thinking about your apprenticeship and kind of the impact that that's allowed you to have at work, and just to share that with everybody here listening. So, so Fatima, just thinking about kind of the apprenticeship that you're on, how has it allowed you to grow and be successful, and what sort of impact is it having at work for you right now?
In terms of personal life, the apprenticeship is having a great impact because not only is allowing me to further explore my interests for tech, but also giving me tools to kind of upskill and gain the skills and the competencies required to further grow within my chosen career path, but also is allowing me to earn a decent living while doing that. But on a professional side of things within the team, I think the apprenticeship, being an apprentice within the team, I think helped me bring a fresh perspective to the team, and I have feedback that my team is becoming more and more confident with the code they're doing, because sometimes they have to pass it through me and I take like a fresh view on it, and also they have to teach it to me at some point. So that's kind of helping them also to review their code and everything. But recently I've been working on an accessibility project, and that's something that I'm quite excited and proud about, because it's helping me make an impact and make Depop a more accessible platform for all our users. So yeah.
That's fascinating. Thank you. Thanks. Rebecca, how about you?
I think when I went into the apprenticeship, one of the main reasons why I chose to do it was obviously because you get the experience, you're working in the workplace. And obviously one of the great advantages of an apprenticeship is that you're getting work experience and you're learning skills on the job. But I didn't realise how valuable having a coach, having the theory to go alongside it can be. I think everyone has days where they go to work, they just aren't feeling great about themselves, or there's like imposter syndrome, especially working in tech as a female. There are days where you just think, am I doing this right? And I think having like Faria there to be like, just to give you more confidence, you can go back into the workplace and just feel so much stronger and feel like you really do belong in the team, which is good.
So confidence and support, I really like that. Bernard, from your perspective as a coach, what are some of the ways that you're seeing the apprenticeship impacts the lives of like your apprentices, and then the impact that they're having at work?
Wow. I mean, Fatima is a very impressive person. Let's say Fatima, I've known Fatima since September. She has like learned so much. Her skill in, she basically, when she started at Depop, was learn iOS development. So she learned a brand new language, like from scratch, like Swift. And like seeing the work that she's done and the projects that she's been doing over the last few months is just really impressive. The pace of development and the way that she's kind of like grown these skills, and now they're starting to give her like developer work to do. It's like, so what's kind of like impactful for me is like that the career trajectory that Fatima is now on is like really sought after. She's an iOS developer. Like it's kind of like, it's really cool. What's exciting for me is like the impact that this has on the industry. So if you think about the iPhone, the gender split of iPhone owners, what do you reckon it is? Got to be 50-50. Like it's billions and billions and billions of iPhones. They're owned kind of equally by men and women. But then if you look statistically, who's writing all the software for it, it is 2-3/3 men. So like that needs adjusting. If we're to improve the software that we experience every day and consume every day, to take it forwards, really, actually, we need more women to create it. But like seeing Fatima on this career trajectory is like, yes, that's what we need. We need more female software engineers that bring their unique experience and perspective to the software development process. So I'm really kind of excited by Fatima's sort of like the promise of what it is that she can do. And I think already at Depop, they love her. They're very impressed with her, like the work that she started to do on accessibility is like, there's something very unique that Fatima brings to that. So I kind of like, I'm quite excited. I would love to see more Fatimas in the world. I kind of think, yep, that's what our industry needs. And here at Multiverse, like we are facilitating that journey. Fatima's actually doing it, but we're all on the sidelines cheering, going, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I have to add to that being a female apprentice, but being coached by a male professional, and also having a male mentor is quite, maybe at the beginning I was apprehensive about it, but it's kind of helped a lot accelerate that pace, because they both so understanding, and maybe I'm lucky to have both of them, and the support on a daily basis is incredibly helpful to make me see things in a pragmatic way, and then also move forward with the challenges. And because I know they are by my side, I'm not doing it on my own, and that's quite helpful, and that's gonna allowing me to be bolder with the steps I take with my learning. So yeah.
It's so, I don't know what the right word even to say, because like listening to this just makes me really just smile and just be so happy to hear that, because you know we here at Multiverse, you know, we it's about individual lives, individual journeys, individual stories, and everybody has their own kind of journey that they're on, and it's fantastic, Fatima, to see that the impact that you're having, and Rebecca as well, in kind of the corners of the world that you're working in. So that is so great. And Varia, just to kind of close off for this round before we open up for questions, like similar question to you around kind of the impact that apprentices are having in their place of work. So, you know, Rebecca and other people that you're working with.
Mm-hmm. So touching on what you said before about how apprenticeships are touching apprentices' lives, it's life-changing. Imagine the best companies out there are taking on apprentices, and we just happen to be partnering up with some of the best companies. So being able to see my apprentices working at places like Silkthread, L'Oreal, we've got apprentices at Google. These are dreams come true for some people, and it's actually happening. Like Rebecca, by the time you finish, I've said this to you so much, but you are in a really, really good position. You're going to have employers fighting over you because you've got the skills and the experience in such a great tech company where you're exposed to so much. So that's what the apprentices get out of it. But for the companies as well, young people, they offer like a fresh alternative, and not just young people, but they offer like a new way of thinking, new ideas, diversity as well. So I came across a situation the other day where I read a portfolio of a young person who works at a media company with some of the best, the biggest fashion brands in the world. Think Louis Vuitton, those kind of levels. And hearing how her ideas are actually influencing major change, such as diversity in advertising campaigns. It's just, you don't realize the impact that having fresh, young talent, diverse talent can bring. And it's useful for the companies, it's useful for the apprentices, and I'm just waiting for more companies to get on board.
Welcome to Steph, welcome to Jamie, Aisling, and also to Neve. Hi everyone.
My name's Neve. I'm an assistant manager in the data and technology business at JDX, which is a financial consultancy firm that I've worked at for almost 4 years now. I'm a career manager internally and a project manager for a Python automation program at a central market infrastructure provider. I'm working towards the leadership and management qualification with Aisling at Multiverse, and I'm also studying a master's in neuroscience part-time.
I am a senior business analyst working in the public sector. My sort of focus is on children and family services, and sort of primary focus of my work is on sort of the identification and reporting of, you know, some of the most vulnerable people in our community, mainly children and their families. And I'm on the Data Fellowship Apprenticeship.
I'm Steph. I am a team lead for the Digital Academy, which is training up epic people into awesome coaches for the data team so that we can work with even more data apprentices. I have been a data coach here since 15 months. So the length of an average apprenticeship, it feels like this much time. and this much time all rolled into one. It's been amazing.
I am a management coach with Multiverse. So I work with Neve, who is one of my wonderful apprentices at JDX. As a management coach, I work with more people who are more established in their roles, let's say. I don't want to say older. Often they're a little bit older than the apprentices we heard from earlier. I joined Multiverse in January 2020. So I was a newbie with Varia.
Amazing. So similar to kind of the first group, I'd love to know your journeys into tech and kind of like what kind of was the turning point, what made you decide to kind of move into the teams and roles that you're doing right now. So Neve, do you want to go first?
Sure, thanks. So I actually joined JDX in an operational role, and I then transferred into tech about 18 months ago now. Whilst I had always had an interest in tech and actually science more generally, my undergrad is actually in politics. So professionally, I didn't have much to leverage. After about 2 years at JDX, I find myself working for a client on a project that involved application development and working directly with developers, writing user stories and involved in all of that stuff, which is really exciting. And I decided that I preferred that. So I completed IBM's professional certificate in data science on Coursera over about a 9-month period. And then I just made a commitment to continue learning, approached the business lead at the time, and transitioned over to the data and tech space. So now I have quite a good range of technical skills and I help others. And I think that, coupled with studying neuroscience in my own time, has led me to a point where I feel like I'm on the right path in the tech space.
Amazing. So you said like kind of a sense of curiosity and like the desire to learn, that was kind of the thing that kind of brought you into this space.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just seeing that there are things I wanted to try and doing a bit of different things. I found that I didn't like some languages. I did like Python. I liked visualization and analysis, and yeah, just experimenting over a period of time.
Fantastic. And Jamie, how about you? What's your journey?
So I've pretty much worked in the public sector for my entire working life. But I started off in finance because my degree is actually in economics. It seemed like the obvious choice at the time, but I sort of realized that after a while, it wasn't really the right fit for me. I found it actually quite boring. And I saw a secondment going for a junior, very junior data analyst in a team where they were looking at applying sort of AI and machine learning to sort of real world problems that are faced by local authorities. And I kind of just jumped at it and probably spent the next sort of couple of years just data cleaning, but I really, really enjoyed it. And then I went on maternity leave and the apprenticeship came up and I sort of begged, borrowed, climbed through a window to get on this course and sort of came back early and, never looked back really. It's been amazing.
I love that. And what would you say has been the impact your apprenticeship has had on your work life, to date, Jamie?
Sorry, me again.
Right, I'll go.
So I think the most obvious thing is, obviously coming back, I was about sort of upskilling more than anything else. It's sort of, you spend so much time away, you feel like you're de-skilling and you sort of get a bit of a brain fog. So it was really about sort of upskilling and sort of, taking a step forward in my understanding of data, how data works. And also it's provided insights into the segment of the population that I, work with. The other thing is sort of, building confidence. I know that's been mentioned by the other apprentices as well, and sort of being able to sort of participate in those more sort of technical conversations and also feel like my contributions were valid, even though you realise that nobody really knows everything. Yeah. But also I think the most surprising one for me was just becoming, thanks to Steph, a mentor for other people in my team, which was quite surprising. Because of the work that we've been doing, I've got to create sort of how-to guides that have been used by my team, and that's been surprisingly helpful. So yeah, those three.
I love that, thank you. Neve, same question, like what, talking about the internship and the impact that it's had in your work life so far.
Yeah, so I think it is hard to pick a couple of things because genuinely I've learned so much over the apprenticeship, but I would definitely say that it's given me the tools that I need to be an effective manager. Mm-hmm. I've learned some really good personal strategies around time management, stress management, and most importantly, I feel I've learned how to ask for help at this point in my career, whether that's with Aisling or my manager or my peers on the program. And that's both sort of academically, like the content, thinking about managing different personalities, but also in practice. So for example, recently Aisling has helped me so much with just asking for feedback. And that sounds, I think, silly to some people, but for me, that's been a real challenge in my career. And finally, I would say it's just given me such a wave of confidence. I really genuinely struggled, and still do to a degree, with imposter syndrome. I know Rebecca mentioned that earlier too. I have this sense of, someone will catch me out eventually and I shouldn't be here. And for me, that was made worse by a lot of experiences that are undoubtedly more common for women, like having people message me on LinkedIn to correct articles when I haven't asked for it, or to tell me what I should focus on learning. And it is part of the female experience still, but the program has taught me a lot of resilience and just managing those in a really productive way for myself.
Wow, thank you. I mean, just following on from that, I mean, Aisling, as Neve's coach, I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of some of the ways that you've been able to support her and other apprentices like Neve in sort of that navigating that space as a woman and showing up as leaders, and kind of what to do when you are faced with that, because that word confidence has been coming up a lot in this conversation. How do you navigate that, really?
So I love hearing what Neve has to say there, that summary of what she's learned so far. It's wonderful, because I've seen her grow so much in this year, and that confidence as well that she's mentioned. I think I see a huge part of my role, and I think actually Rebecca mentioned this earlier, a huge part of my role is just really genuinely believing in the potential of the people that I'm supporting, like Neve, and helping them to identify their own skills and push for those opportunities that they know their skills should be opening up to them once they truly believe in themselves. And I think especially for women in tech, that's incredibly difficult, because as a woman in tech, maybe even more so a young woman in tech like Neve, you may often find yourself as the only woman at that table. And even in the most progressive organization, that is going to mean that sometimes you come away from interactions feeling sidelined or underestimated. And that's a really difficult thing to come back from. So I see a big part of my role as helping people to build themselves back up, perhaps have that resilience, that bounce back ability, and just having the tools to remember why you're at the table in the first place, which is what I think I have seen Neve developing, that self-belief. So I would say, get yourself a mentor, someone there to fight your corner and show you their journey. And that's an incredibly powerful thing to have.
Wow, I think that's incredible. And, that piece around, being at the table and looking around and seeing, not many people who look like you sat at the table. It's just that reminder as women that if you are at the table, you're there for a reason, and you use that voice and kind of share your thoughts and share your views because people want to hear them. Steph, I'd love to hear from you, really, because you've got a really lovely journey in terms of like how you've kind of moved into the tech space and kind of how you're using your experiences to kind of, pour into the next generation of women in tech. What are some of the kind of misconceptions that you've had to overcome and that you're now kind of helping and equipping your apprentices to overcome as well?
Number one misconception to all you potential data scientists, analysts, tech people out there: you do not have to like Python to be good at data. Aside from that, for me, it's that you have to be this maths genius who can code in every language. You must present the way that a data analyst should. And let me tell you, I've been a data analyst. I've worked in tech companies, retail companies, in insurance doing it. I never looked like anybody else in the room, usually by design, to be fair. But don't be afraid to set yourself out there as different. Because if you are, it means by definition, you are bringing something new. You are bringing something exciting, because that group of people that aren't like you couldn't come up with it without you. And just because your voice might be in the minority does not mean that every so often you don't stand yourself up on a box, raise your voice, and make yourself heard.
The lady has spoken. We can end there now. Thank you, Steph. Thank you. Jamie, I'd love to hear from you, like what kind of misconceptions or perceptions that you've had to overcome in terms of what people assume or perceive you to be, or things that you've just thought, oh, I thought it would be this way, but it's not.
I think the one that springs to mind, first of all, is sort of the misconception around sort of what people associate tech with when it comes to sort of, the local authority and like charities and sort of anything in the public sector, that, we're not at the cutting edge and we're not sort of, pushing in that respect kind of thing. And, I think that, there has actually, from my experience, and sort of, I do go to like sort of, council conferences, but there has been like a real push to sort of develop and, encourage, sort of digital innovations, working across like diverse and quite inclusive networks, sort of with institutions and different communities. And it's always been against this backdrop of sort of like, funding constraints. So I think it does require you to work like significantly more creatively. And, I think when your bottom line isn't profit, you're required to innovate a lot more, and you end up doing a lot more with significantly less, which is actually quite exciting. Sometimes it is, it's quite difficult, but essentially it's always been, onwards and upwards kind of thing. It's always been really interesting. So yeah, I think that's that's one I had definitely when I was moving into it anyway.
Yeah. Do you have like an example of something that you've worked on that has been really just impactful in the day-to-day lives of people? Like a project?
So obviously the backdrop of COVID and everything like that that's been going on, we're sort of in the process of trying to sort of develop ways of sort of identifying, young people who might be, vulnerable of going into sort of like into care, especially, because people have been locked down for such long periods of time, this puts a lot of stress on families. So that's what we've been currently working on doing, is trying to find ways to sort of actively identifying these young people before they enter crisis, and sort of trying to put interventions in place so that they end up having positive outcomes at the end of it. So that's just one of those things that we've been working on.
Amazing, thank you. And Neve, do you have any examples as well in kind of the work that you've been doing where you've been having an impact either in the lives of other people at JDX or in particular projects?
Yeah, so I think at JDX we do have quite a small data and technology business still, but a really, really great team. And we have quite a few women now working in the business. And some of the things that we've introduced are things like a Women in Tech forum. So we get not just within the business, but anybody across JDX who's interested in tech can join our forums on a monthly basis. And we do socials, resource share, have events as well. But also something that I've worked on is a forum that we call Tech 404 within JDX. So it's a space on Teams that is accessible. People can engage in different ways. And I feel like the idea is it sort of levels the playing field a little bit, because you don't just rely on people with the loudest voices, who are, generally the more confident guys, being the ones that are dominating the conversations. You create an environment where everybody can contribute. And I think those are sort of like micro amendments you can make that are really important.
I like that, creating an environment where everyone can contribute. So important, so everyone can have their voice heard. And just going back to the conversation earlier around mentors and kind of, Ashley, you mentioned about getting a mentor, and actually someone posted a question around, is it a mentor that you should be, you want, or is it allies in terms of supporting women in tech roles and kind of increasing that diversity? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it's an either or. I'd love to have both. So yeah, to have a mentor who's, I think that one of the things that I see as the real benefit of having a mentor is that they are there fully present in that moment where you're talking to them just for you. And I think that is what I try to provide as a coach as well, is that space for someone to have a quiet moment to look inwardly at how they're doing and where they want to be going. So perhaps that's what a mentor can provide and open up some opportunities that they have access to. Allies, yeah, turning as many people as possible into allies in the workplace. I think that's a wonderful way to go. And that's where these busting these misconceptions about women in tech, I think that's where that comes in, because these misconceptions that tech is this, I guess most people probably see tech as, I know I felt like this mysterious arena where tech equals coding and coding equals sorcery. And I don't know how I could possibly contribute to that. and perhaps women or people who are less represented in the tech space are going to be more susceptible to being put off from entering it by that misconception. So busting the misconception to get more allies on board, I guess, but also getting yourself a mentor. Let's have both.
Let's have both, thank you. When you think about, we talked a lot about misconceptions and busting the misconceptions, what is one thing that organizations could do, and this is to all of you, to really encourage more women to come into tech roles, to even consider coming into tech roles, and just that curiosity and that desire to learn and having that support? What are some things that companies can do to facilitate that? Steph, I'll go to you first.
So I have a solid example to work from this. I used to work for an exam board, and there was a large disparity between the number of women at C-suite above and C-suite below. And the question was why? It was a really egalitarian company. It was a great place to work. And so they looked into it, and what they realized was it wasn't they were being discriminated against at interview, it was that they weren't applying. The question was why? And as part of my data apprenticeship, I had found this gender decoder. And what it does is it's a bit of natural language processing. So data for good there. See, we can do it. It's not just for finance. And it goes through and it identifies phrases that women naturally do not identify with and that men naturally would. By removing these terms and replacing them with something gender neutral so that all men that were, they could apply for this job still would, the pool of applicants, just the diversity went. And when I left, the problem wasn't fixed, but they'd seen such a great effect in the pilot for looking at the C-suite, they rolled it out across a whole load of other types of roles. It's a tiny thing that can come out of the good of ML and AI, but it takes that someone to think about bringing it in. And that's what we need to do, is to think, what are the problems and not just what the symptom is, right? Yes, there are a number of ways that we could superficially get a more diverse team, but if we don't change the thinking behind it, then what is the point? And so it's dig into it, see that change and think, right, how can I use my tech skills to push this forward?
Yeah, it's so funny because I actually discovered that tool this week, the gender decoder. It's like, you just Google it, guys, and you can put anything through it and it'll just assess the language that you've written for, like, traditional words that appeal to men and words that appeal to women. So really, really fascinating. For the sake of acronyms, machine learning, because you went ML, and AI, artificial intelligence, just for those of us. So again, just like the inclusivity piece there. But that's a really great point, Steph, and a really good example. Thank you. Jamie, what about you? What can companies do?
I think the way that my company did it was being able to offer flexibility. So as I've said before, I'm a parent kind of thing, and I think that was what really put me off initially by taking on, additional work, was the idea of sort of juggling home life, work life, and then this additional piece of learning as well. And I think flexibility is quite important in that respect, and also just being able to sort of have a really frank conversation with your boss by saying things like, this is too much, I'm overwhelmed right now, and that being heard and that being taken into account. And I think that's really important. And that has been invaluable in that respect. I don't think I would have been able to continue if I sort of hadn't had those sort of moments with Steph where she's not only coach, ally, therapist, confessor, just to be sort of to be able to sort of have that space to sort of say, this is too much, or can we find a way around working around that timetable? And that flexibility is really important. So I think that's important.
Yeah, I would echo that as well as a parent, to know that you can work in a place where that is honoured, and you can, bring your whole self to work, as that phrase is. And your whole self is, you have a family or you have other commitments, and you want to still, and you will still do a great job, but you just got to honour those things as well. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jamie. Niamh, what about you? What can companies do to help to improve this?
So I think in all conversations about diversity and equality, amplify is a great word that's used. And I think it's a really easy thing for companies to do. If you have people of color, if you have women who are doing excellent things in your business, amplify it and show them off as examples of what's achievable for people, what's normal. I mean, it's normal to have women in tech, at least it should be. And it shows people who are aspiring to that what is possible and what's available for them. Like I said, in our business, I think JDX does a really great example of supporting everybody, including the women that we have in tech, and having things like the Women in Tech Forum lets us amplify each other and also look at people who aren't in tech but want to be, and like put a hand out and say, yeah, come and study with us, come and look at the resources with us, be part of it now, rather than, you know, we're going to gatekeep it and make you go through all these hoops and make sure that you do Python and that you do SQL. Those formalities are important, but they're not part of accessing tech and being passionate about tech.
I like that. Amplify and then just make it more accessible. Brilliant. And then Aisling, finally from you, what would you say companies should do?
I think Neve is actually a great example of this. There's a huge focus that we see in getting women into tech on schools, STEM subjects in schools, getting women into tech at the start of their careers. I think there's a lot of work to be done in opening it up to people as maybe their second career or retraining within an organisation. So Neve used the phrase there, putting a hand out and saying, you know, you're interested, come and look at this. So I think that's a place that organisations could be focusing some of their efforts. Whereas most of the philanthropic efforts that organisations put in place to get women into tech is happening a lot earlier. It's happening with girls in school, which is really important. But I think there's a lot we can be doing later on as well.
Yeah, so attack it from both angles. Yeah, I'd completely agree. Thank you all so much for your answers, and it's just been really lovely to kind of hear more about your stories and your journeys. I'm going to bring everybody back now because I have a final question for all of you, which I'd love for you to answer, which is if you were to give one tip to a woman who's considering a career in tech, what would that be? And we'll go around and you can just give me your one tip. And all of you in the audience, if you have a question for the panel, we've got about 5 more minutes that you can ask any of them a question. So please put them into the Q&A box and then I'll pick them up to ask the panel. So going around quickly, and I'll go in order who I can see. So Bernard, you're first. What is one piece of advice that you'd give to a woman considering a career in tech? I
think I'd remind them about Theseus's ship. You know this idea of like there's a ship, and if you replace one of the planks, is it the same ship? Kind of, if you replace all of the planks, in fact, if you placed all the parts on the ship, is it still the same ship? Yeah, kind of like, so companies are like that, like they're not fixed inherently in existing things. They're made of parts which are very changeable. So you have a role to play in changing the plank, if you like, or like, do you know what I mean? Like all the parts of a company can be replaced. So, and that includes attitudes as well that are held by groups. So seeing companies as kind of empty and not fixed, but something that's very fluid, like I think I would hope that would make you feel more empowered to jump in and become part of the change. And that, but particularly, it's like in tech, we need women to get into positions where they are hiring. So a tech person, go get into, don't stop until you're there, until you're hiring, and then hire women. But then you're in a position to actually start rebuilding the ships. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that. And that's one of the great joys of my role, because I do a lot of hiring, and there's a lot of influence you have in that position to be able to accommodate that. Steph, you're next on my screen. What's your tip?
Yes, I am unmuted. Lovely. Okay, there is no industry in the world, no matter how naturalistic it is, that does not involve technology in some way. Whether you see yourself as the geek or the high school cheerleader or the weird kid that sat reading and drawing instead of going and playing with their friends, right? There is a place for you within tech. And if you don't see it, go make it. Because the world we live in is full of these amazing possibilities. Tech allows us to connect with people that we never would have thought possible. And so there is always the right sounding board out there for your idea. Find it, use it, and then just bring it to life. Yes.
Thank you. Fatima, what's your one tip?
Be curious. Be curious by your own interests, your inner thought, but also be curious about all the opportunities out there. Be curious about the people, the happenings, and the technology, the innovation, things that are happening within your circle of interest or even beyond it. So I would say be curious and don't just stop at preconceived or misconceptions that tells you, okay, this is it. Go beyond it. Ask for why not tech? And if it is tech, how can I go in? Who can I talk to? Reach out to people. But above all, stay curious and be curious about all the opportunities out there.
This is a piece of advice I actually got from Steph, which is be brave and go to those interviews. Even if you don't think that it's necessarily the right fit for you, go for it anyway. And then if you do get rejected, you actually end up learning quite a lot from that interview. Use it as a way of sort of, taking notes and, prepping for the next one and being prepared that way. So yeah, just being brave and putting yourself out there, really.
I would definitely say that having a real visible network that you're part of is important. Something that I did quite early on in moving over to tech was on my LinkedIn. I made the effort to go and follow women in tech, so that like all the success posts on my LinkedIn, they're all women who are heading up these great initiatives, people like, Ali Miller and Cassie Kozakova at Google. And I just consume their articles and their resources because it reminds me that that's normal and my network looks like that for me. I think that's really important to make the effort to find that yourself.
I would say don't be scared to break the stereotype. Unfortunately, there is a stereotype, but the whole reason I got into my apprenticeship is because I decided to stray from the stereotype of just going to uni straight after doing my A-levels. And I think it's opportunities that scare you the most, which are most impactful. And yes, there's a glass ceiling, but it's there to be broken. So just go and break it.
I remember a quote or a speech that I was listening to by Sheryl Sandberg. And she said that men apply for jobs if they look at the job description and they can feel that they can do 60% of what's listed on there, whereas a woman will only apply if she can do 100% of what's on the job description. Just believe in ourselves a bit more, and also just do your own research. Don't listen to the misconceptions, particularly if they're from people who have never even worked in tech before. There is a space for everybody, and the more females that we have in the industry, the more they're paving the way for other females. They're understanding about the flexibility, about the childcare, about the value that we can bring as well. So do your own research, and there is a space for everybody.
I would say identify your allies and your cheerleaders and use them. Don't be scared of asking for help, asking for support, connecting with them. We often have this feeling of, oh, but they're so busy, they don't have time for little old me. They do. Make them make the time for little old you.